Buckle up, you guys. I'm going to do the be-all, end-all of living in Maryland versus Virginia and talk about which one might be better. Where do you want to move? Let's do it. So the million-dollar question of the DC metro area and anybody who is moving here is whether living in Maryland or Virginia is better. Ask anyone who already lives here, and you are going to hear some very strong opinions on which state is better. So I am Melissa Terzis, DC Real Estate Mama. I do these videos for you every week. I break down living in DC, Maryland, and Northern Virginia. I've lived here over 20 years. I know these areas. I go deeper than anybody. I don't use AI to write my scripts. I'm doing it myself. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss the new videos. Now, disclaimer necessary. I'm going to say this again at the end. In the past, when I have compared videos and posted videos and compared Maryland and Virginia, I always receive some interesting comments, right? People have said like, oh, you're obviously a fan of Virginia, or you obviously hate Maryland. That's really not true. I lived in Maryland for 4 years. I own property there. I never lived in Virginia, but I would live in Virginia, and I would also move back to Maryland without hesitation. So please don't come for me. I mean, I don't know. I'm one of those people that I feel like I'm going to be fine wherever like my family and my peoples are. Like, I'm okay with that. So whether that's Maryland, Virginia, or DC, I'm fine with any of them. All right, the number one thing that you need to figure out here is commuting and traffic. So I'm going to start with commute because this is the critical piece that we have to answer first. Where is your job? How often are you going to be commuting to work? Layered on top of that, we also need to know, what is your tolerance for commuting? I have had clients that say 30 minutes door to door is the max they are going to do, and that greatly informs a search, and that's different from the clients who say, I only have to go into the office 1 or 2 days a week or 1 or 2 days a month even. Those clients are usually the ones that say, hey, I'm fine if I ride a train, once a week or whatever. I'll even commute an hour or more each way, provided that it's on public transportation and I can live in the area that I want or have the schools that I want for my kids. All of that. And so all of that ends up figuring into kind of where people, where they sort of land on the spectrum of where they're going to live. But the commute and everything is super, super important. And that's why I bring that up first. So the Red Line Metro runs to both Rockville and Glenmont, Maryland. On the eastern side of DC, the Metro lines run just to the Beltway. On the western or Virginia side, Metro lines run much farther. The orange line ends at Vienna, but you've got the new Silver Line, and that splits off and continues out to Ashburn. There's also Yellow Line as well, which runs south to Huntington, and then the blue line that continues off and runs to Franconia and Springfield, Virginia. If you will be commuting by car, there are a few important things to know. There are carpool options in Northern Virginia, and these don't exist in Maryland. Doesn't mean you can't set up your own carpool in Maryland, but they have what they call slugging in Virginia, or slug rides, and it's kind of a cool process. Essentially, it's an organized carpool where drivers pick up passengers to fill their car and then be eligible to use the HOV lanes. Slug rides are very interesting, though, because they've notoriously come with all kinds of rules, like you're not allowed to talk, you're not allowed to ask them to change the air conditioning, you're not allowed to blast music in your headphones that everybody else hears. Anyway, I'm going to link to that so you can check that out. Now, Northern Virginia, I feel, is pretty proactive at dealing with traffic woes. They are constantly trying to expand highways and adjust to the growing population. They instituted toll lanes on 66 in the Beltway. I-66 did not used to be a toll road, and now all of a sudden during rush hour, it automatically becomes a toll road. And that's for all lanes. It's not just like, oh, if you're in this lane, it's a toll road. Nope, all lanes. I recently headed to McLean, and I hopped onto I-66 because my GPS told me to hop on for a couple exits. Just to go 4 exits, you guys, not even like 3 miles. I was charged $17.75. I almost had a heart attack. And then I remembered, oh, the Easy Pass bill goes to my husband and I never see it. Anyway, whatever. One more thing to know if you are in Northern Virginia. If you live west of DC and you are commuting into DC by car, every morning you're driving east. Guess what? The sun always rises in the east, which means the sun is going to be in your eyes. And then every evening when you're driving home, the sun is also going to be setting in the west, and that's also going to be in your eyes. These are things you need to know. Not so much in the summer because the sun is higher in the sky, but in the winter, it's a bloodbath getting out west. All those roads get pretty backed up, and it creates a lot of additional stop and go, just so that you are aware. Now, on the Maryland side, you do not have toll roads, nor do you have slugging options, but you also have less highways. More people actually commute to Virginia and to DC than they do to Maryland, but you will find a lot of traffic in Maryland as home prices are generally less expensive there on the eastern side of DC especially, and in Maryland, so that the commuting patterns tend to trend that way. They kind of go in the afternoon, you're going clockwise around the Beltway toward the Maryland side, and in the morning you're going counterclockwise. One final note, when I moved here in 2001, I was astonished at what bad drivers Maryland has. I don't get it, but I've never seen anything like it. It is not just me either. This is actually a thing. Things I noticed are like, they just don't pay attention to normal rules of the road. Like when you come to a four-way stop, they just stop and then they go. They don't give a crap about seeing who was in order. They just go, right? The other thing they do is they get in the left lane and then they just sit there. They don't use the left lane as passing. Anyway, their bad driving habits have morphed into the whole like area, and it's destroyed everything. And every time you see like a car crash, people will drive by and go, Maryland plates. Yep. Anyway. All right, real estate. Real estate. Home prices in Virginia trend higher than they do in Maryland. And this is because Virginia continuously attracts businesses to the state. We are going to cover a little bit more about why in the next section when we talk about business and the economy. The average price of all homes sold in the last 6 months in the following Virginia areas are... All right, Arlington, $1.4 million. This is the average price. City of Alexandria, $1.3 million. McLean, $2.5 million. Vienna, Virginia, $1.4 million. Fairfax, Virginia, not the county, but the actual Fairfax, $988,000. Ashburn, Virginia, $1.16 million. Now let's look at the counties. So the three other counties, when I did Arlington and the City of Alexandria, those two stand on their own. Arlington is the county, but also Arlington is Arlington. Now, counties. Fairfax County, the average price, $1.17 million. Loudoun County's average price is $1.06 million. Prince William County's average price, $711,000. So you have more affordable housing in the Prince William County areas. Now, let's drive ourselves up to Maryland for a hot second. These are the average prices of homes that are sold in the last 6 months in the following areas. Bethesda, Maryland, your average price, $1.7 million. Chevy Chase, $1.95 million. Rockville, $813,000. Silver Spring, $689,000. Kensington, Maryland, $1 million. If we look at Montgomery County as a whole, the average price is $1.03 million. Now, the Maryland areas with the average home price over $1 million are just Bethesda and Chevy Chase. And so you're probably thinking, like, Melissa, you said that Virginia is more expensive than Maryland. It is. Bethesda and Chevy Chase are to Maryland what McLean is to Virginia. And we saw McLean's price was up at 2.5. The Virginia areas with average home prices over $1 million they're just much more common, right? So houses just cost more in Northern Virginia. And again, we're going to get to the why part of this when we get to business and economy of each state. Something else of note, there are tear downs everywhere in both Maryland and Virginia, but there's a lot less of that like tear down and then rebuilt McMansion in Maryland. So I once heard somebody refer to Maryland as Marylandistan, and I knew exactly what that meant. Maryland has a lot of rules, and when it comes to real estate, there's no exception to that. In Maryland, you're really more likely to see a 50 to 80-year-old house that's been renovated several times rather than torn down and rebuilt to the edge of the lot line. That's just because they preserve homes more often than they tear them down, and that's just... The county will give you a lot easier of a time if you're kind of reworking the current house versus tearing it down. Virginia, though, getting a tear down permit is much easier on the Virginia side of the Potomac River. They love building things in Virginia. They love building them right up to the lot line. Rules? What rules? Smart growth? There's no smart growth here. They want houses. They want real estate. They want your tax money. They want all of that. Now drive out west in Virginia and watch how the houses just like come at you as you crest hills in some areas. Like Centerville, Chantilly, you'll just as far as the eye can see, you see houses. Virginia is definitely more builder friendly, and they don't care if you overbuild the crap out of a house so that it's towering on your lot. Have at it. Knock yourself out. Not always true, but they do have setbacks and all of that, but they're just a lot more forgiving with house building and planning and all of that. All right, now let's talk about business and economy because I did allude to that. Companies do not relocate to Maryland, period. They just don't. You always hear of big companies relocating from somewhere else to Northern Virginia, right? The big news was Amazon, but there's a lot of other companies that are here. How often do you hear that some company like struck a great deal with Maryland and moved there? Not that often. Almost never. Now, what is in Northern Virginia? Well, everything, you guys. Northern Virginia has 24 of the Fortune 500 companies headquartered or with major offices here. They are some of the following: Amazon, Google, Raytheon, Boeing, Nestle, Mars, Capital One, E-Trade, Freddie Mac, Navy Federal Credit Union, Accenture, Booz Allen, Northrop Grumman, Motley Fool, Rosetta Stone, Hilton Sunrise Senior Living, Interstate Hotels and Resorts, Boeing, PBS, Volkswagen, Lidl, Bloomberg are just some of them. There are close to 200 companies who have chosen to locate their corporate headquarters in Northern Virginia. It's a lot. Tyson's Corner is essentially its own little city, as well as Pentagon City, which is headed toward its own claim to fame as a hub of business thanks to Amazon. The Pentagon City National Landing roadways are being redone to create more pedestrian-friendly centers. So there is no comparison on the Maryland side of the Potomac. Maryland has 3 Fortune 500 companies in the DC suburbs. Those are Lockheed Martin, Marriott, and Discovery. There are other large employers like Choice Hotels, Blackstreet Capital, Geico, Goodwill, Host Hotels, Ritz-Carlton, Total Wine, and more. You've got NIH is here, Fort Meade, and then you've got colleges and universities. But Maryland employment centers are just not as robust as Virginia. Virginia also has the dullest tech corridor. That can't be beat. The data centers alone, big business. If you prefer more of a quieter bedroom community with less sprawl, then Maryland is probably better. If you prefer more of a job center with more sprawl as a result, then Virginia is probably better. Are we done? Not even close. Let's talk about politics next. You won't find huge differences between the Maryland cities and towns just outside DC and the Virginia suburbs of DC that we call Nova here. Both areas are more blue than red. Maryland is progressive, it's democratic, it's liberal. It's really like a one-party state, and you'll get everything that kind of comes with that. The county governments control growth by calling it smart growth, right? They preserve green space. There are housing programs here. Montgomery County requirements for new construction sometimes require that up to 20% of the new homes that are built are reserved for income-restricted buyers or tenants. Until recently, Maryland also had significant gun control, but then they figured out, somebody did at least, that was a violation of constitutional rights. So now anybody can get a gun, no need to prove your reason, which is what you used to have to do. Now, Northern Virginia's counties seem to trend more Democrat as time passes. The population shifted left in the most recent years. Northern Virginia has gotten on board with the renaming of roads and schools away from things like Lee Highway that were after General Robert E. Lee to, now it's Langston Boulevard, right? There used to be Washington Lee High School. They changed it to Washington Liberty. So you're seeing that at least in Northern Virginia, the vestiges of the Old South are kind of, getting wiped away. Lee Highway does turn back into Lee Highway, though, once you get to Fairfax County. So that part of Langston Boulevard was just renamed for the Arlington portion only. You will still feel the origins of history in Virginia, though, as a red state, especially if you drive out of the metro area. I've seen Confederate flags on all sorts of suspect fashion, oh my God, I saw it on a purse once, you guys. And you don't have to go far, 45 minutes to an hour outside the city. I mean, you'll see it. It's less and less, but you still see it. In Maryland, there are rural and conservative parts of the state, but they do not control Maryland's government. In Virginia, a large geographic portion of the state could be classified as rural and conservative. For a while, a high population of Democrats in Northern Virginia were starting to control the state, but in recent years, that's also been showing signs of a shift. And in the most recent election, the Commonwealth of Virginia now has a Republican governor. Income and personal property taxes. Let's do those next. Now, income taxes are higher in Maryland than they are in Virginia. In Virginia, once you hit $17,000 a year in annual income, anything in excess is taxed at the max rate of 5.75%. In Maryland, there are brackets, and you will not pay 5.75% in taxes until you reach $250,000 a year. All right, so let's take a salary of $100,000. Nice round number. Let's talk about what taxes are going to be applied to you in both areas. In Maryland, you are going to pay $46.97 to the state and $3,200 to the county. Some counties vary, but the Metro DC counties tax income at 3.2%. I'm looking at you, Montgomery and Prince George's counties. So total in Maryland, you're going to end up paying $7,900 a year in state and county income taxes. In Virginia, though, you're going to pay $5,750. There are no county income taxes because Virginia gives the counties very little taxing authority. Here is the difference. You don't want to call Virginia the winner yet because Virginia has a personal property tax on cars, trailers, RVs, boats, planes. That can add up. Rates are set by the counties or cities, and they range from like $3.50 on the low end to $5.33 on the high end. And that's applied to every $100 of assessed value, and they use the NADA guide. So what are those amounts? Well, the city of Alexandria, $5.33. Arlington, $5. Loudoun, $4.15. Fairfax, $4.57. Prince William County, $3.57. Now, if you had two cars and you lived in Virginia and the NADA value of each car was $30,000, you could end up paying an extra $3,000 a year in property taxes. That'd be $1,500 per car. Now, living in Virginia, that could cost you an extra $600 a year all of a sudden compared to Maryland, where there might be higher income taxes from the counties, but no personal property tax. It is super important to calculate everything for your specific situation, right? How many cars are you bringing? What's your income going to be? All of that stuff, because it is not apples to apples. There's a lot of nuances to everything, and that's how you're going to basically figure out if one state or the other provides a more favorable tax expenditure over the other. All right, since we're doing taxes, Maryland and Virginia real estate property taxes, let's do those. Maryland has 23 counties and 156 incorporated cities, which each issue property tax assessments. In Montgomery County, there is a county tax of 0.694%, a state tax of 0.112 per mil of assessed value, and 0.28 utility tax. There are additional taxes in each of the Chevy Chase villages, Chevy Chase View, the cities of Rockville, Gaithersburg, Tacoma Park, and 9 separate towns. Why? Because the towns offer city or town services, maybe like trash pickup, so that you're getting taxed from there as well. So if you're outside the city or town limits, you're going to get county services. Most counties and cities have a tax rate anywhere between $1.15 to $1.32 per mil, but there's one outlier, and that is Friendship Heights, where you are going to pay $1.65 per mil. So on a house assessed at $750,000, you would pay around $8,100 in property taxes if you are in an unincorporated area, and maybe closer to $9,000 if you're in a city or town with its own municipal tax. In Virginia, property taxes vary by county and city. Unlike in Maryland, where a city can lie within a county and you could be taxed by both jurisdictions, Virginia has a different setup. Cities in the Commonwealth of Virginia stand on their own, so they do not reside, they are not part of or included in any county. Arlington is $1.03 per $100 of assessed value, and the assessed values actually run pretty close to market value. So a home assessed at $750,000 will have property taxes over about $7,725 per year. In Alexandria, the city, you will be assessed $1.11 per $100 of assessed value. The same home assessed at $750,000 is now going to cost $8,250 per year in property taxes. Fairfax County's tax rate is $1.12. Loudoun County's is 86.5 cents per $100 of assessed value. Prince William County is 92 cents per $100 of assessed value. So you see, as you get further out, taxes get lower. Let's do education next. So on U.S. News and World Report's 2024 list, the highest ranking area high school is Thomas Jefferson in Alexandria, Virginia at number 14. The next area high school on the list is at 139, and that's Walt Whitman, which is in Bethesda, Maryland. Then we have Langley High School in McLean, Virginia, which is at 148. You've got Poolsville in Maryland at 172, and Wooten High School in Rockville, Maryland at 196. And Oakton slid right in there under the wire at 199 because they only ranked 200 of the top schools. So all of these schools have been steadily dropping a few spots to a few dozen spots on the U.S. News list. Locally, we've had all the same issues here as you're seeing and hearing about in high schools across the country, right? Teachers are quitting, schools are overcrowded, there's behavioral issues with some students that aren't getting addressed properly, weapons coming to school, bomb threats, issues with school boards and other school administration, constantly changing curricula. I know a lot of teachers locally, and the unhappiness with many of them it's warranted, right? Some leave and go to private, some just leave. And that's just a huge loss for the schools from which they retired. It really is. Now, this is subjective, but Maryland schools are kind of like a tale of two cities. You've got Montgomery County schools, which uniformly seem to rank well, with many ranked on the notable lists. Prince George's County schools do not rank as well overall. So if this is what you're looking into, you have to really carefully consider specific neighborhoods in both of these counties. These two counties are mostly the extent of the Maryland discussion that I'll cover here when it comes to the counties, because everything else is really, it's I wouldn't call it Metro DC. It's people move there, but it's just farther from the city. Now, Virginia has both county and city schools, so there's a lot more to consider. Arlington County, the city of Alexandria, Fairfax County, Prince William County, Loudoun County, and the cities of Falls Church, Manassas, and Fairfax all have their own districts. When talking about state colleges, though, Virginia is the winner, right? You cannot beat the preference you get in Virginia as a Virginia resident to get into UVA, right? That's the real deal. All right, let's move on, you guys, to restaurants and lifestyle. There is a method behind the Maryland madness when it comes to finding retail and restaurants. The zoning dictates that specific areas for retail are going to be in certain areas, and then everything else is just residential. So you'll see this out in the burbs and farther out where there are what they call village centers in Maryland, where everybody goes essentially to that area to get what they need. Typically, they're anchored by the shopping center is anchored by a grocery store, and then it's got all the other little things there that you may want, right? Dry cleaner, they work on, the different businesses that they want to have in there. Virginia has retail kind of all over. Shopping centers are not just in like special designated areas. You'll see them kind of pop up even in neighborhoods and things like that. Now, this area, the whole metro area, is so international and diverse, and we benefit from that tremendously when it comes to the eats. There's almost every type of food, ethnic food possible that you could ever want, right? And when I say like ethnic food, I'm not just talking about like Mexican food and Italian food. The other evening, we picked up Afghan food. We're also big fans of Ethiopian food, and you can get that here too. There is such a wide variety of choice in both Maryland and Virginia that I promise you will never say there's a lack of options. As far as vacation spots also, both states have beaches. Neither state has tons of coastline comparable to the Carolinas or Florida, but you do have beaches. Virginia has wine country. They've got the Shenandoah Valley, which many may argue beat the vacation areas of Maryland. And generally, it's easier to get to the Outer Banks and North Carolina from Virginia, where a lot of people in this area do tend to travel. Maryland, though, has easier access to the Delaware beaches, which are pretty awesome, if I do say so myself. So there's also St. Michael's in Maryland, which is like about as charming and Martha's Vineyard-esque as you can get here. It's on the Eastern Shore. There's also Assateague, which is wild horses. You just go on the beach and there's just wild horses walking around on the beach. A lot of people find this incredibly charming. I am not one of those people. If you are also not one of those people, take note, you guys. I don't cover other areas besides the DC Metro, but I'm going to tell you, never go to Mackinac Island in Michigan. Oh my God. You can't even get cars on that island. It's all horses, and it's just you stepping horse poop everywhere you go. I am moving along to crime. Crime is next. I realize that there are all types of crime, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on two specific types: homicide and carjacking. In 2023, Washington, D.C. had 959 reported carjackings. Now, while this is not a video about D.C. specifically, I wanted to put that out to you as the benchmark, also known as the worst case scenario in this area. And now we can compare what the rest of the metro area looks like to what stupid DC looks like with their 959 carjackings. We endure a lot here. Anyway, here are carjacking numbers for the other areas. I'm going to go in order of most to least. DC was the most, 959. Don't worry, it doesn't get worse than that. Prince George's County had 530 carjackings. Montgomery County, Maryland, 112 carjackings. Fairfax County, Virginia, 25 carjackings. Arlington County, Virginia, 23 carjackings. City of Alexandria does not separate carjackings from the rest of car theft, so I do not have that number for you. Homicides, let's do those next. In 2023 were as follows. Again, I'm giving you DC, right? Like, we win these contests in crime, so I'm giving it to you. 274 homicides, DC. That was 2023. Prince George's County had 88 homicides. Montgomery County, Maryland, 29 homicides. Now we go over the river to Virginia. Fairfax County, Virginia had 17 homicides. City of Alexandria, Virginia, 4 homicides. Arlington County, 2 homicides. You may be wondering, do these numbers indicate that there's less crime in Virginia, or are the police just tougher and more efficient? Yes. The answer is yes. All right, now I want to talk about license plates because I just find this incredibly comical. But if you wanted, well, I should have told you in the beginning, right? But if you wanted the too long didn't read version, let's talk about license plates. Virginia has 250 options for license plates to include the usual colleges and military options. The non-school related options that you are going to see most in Virginia are as follows. Don't tread on me. That's the license plate with the snake. It's yellow. You've got the choose life plate with 2 cartoon kids on it, or you will also see the kids' first plate, which is similar in style to the choose life plate. Now, what does this tell us in a nutshell? Keep in mind, this is statewide. However, Virginia, pro-life, they like guns. I don't know. All right, Maryland offers several hundred specialty plates as well. The ones you're going to see the most, aside from the basic Maryland flag choice, though, are Chesapeake Bay Trust or the Maryland Agricultural Education Plate. So what does this tell us about what Marylanders value? Save the environment. I don't know. I think they should have an Old Bay plate. I mean, Old Bay is like the best, and crabs come from Maryland and whatever. All right. Now, you're also going to see many of these license plates in Maryland crushed into pieces because they are bad drivers, and there's more accidents in Maryland. Anyone? Anyone? I know. I use it all the time. All right. What's best for families? Well, because I'm a mom, I know that viewers expect the mom stamp of approval here on one or the other. Honestly, you guys, this is a toss-up. I generally feel that the closer in areas of Northern Virginia are more urban. Kids have greater independence with the ability to walk places on their own and enjoy a sense of safety. Schools are run by the city or county in which they reside, so this can be hit or miss. Arlington and Fairfax schools, well regarded. Alexandria City schools have had a tough time, though, in recent years with questionable leadership. It's still kind of a transition and a work in progress, though. In Montgomery County, unless you're right near downtown Bethesda, it's going to feel a lot more suburban. And so there's going to be more driving to get your kids to activities for the most part. But then most of Montgomery County is outside the Beltway, so it actually does make sense that it's got more of a suburban feel. Now, Montgomery County schools are very comparable to Fairfax County with all the options that being in a large county-run school system offer. They have variations on school choice and things like that. You're not just stuck with your inbound school. You can, kind of go to some other areas and get other programs. I have videos on the different school districts, so definitely check those out for more information. So, clear as mud? God, I hope not. I did a lot of work on this one. This was like weeks in the making. The DC metro areas of both Maryland and Virginia they're diverse. They've got a lot to offer. They're populated with some of the most highly educated people in the country. Picking the right place for you and your family, it's not easy, but I always tell people you have to come here. Like, you just have to see it yourself. I'm going to do the best I can to show you everything and to explain things to you and all of that. But, when people are so confused still and they're like, thanks for your videos, but yeah, we're going to come make a trip there. As soon as they come here, they get into Virginia, they maybe eat a meal, they maybe stay a night or two in a hotel, then they go to Maryland and do the same thing. Hands down, 99% of people come out of that weekend trip saying, I know exactly what we want to do and I know where we're going to call home. So, I could be equally happy living on either side of the river. I love Arlington. I love many of the Alexandria neighborhoods on the Virginia side. I lived in Rockville and I loved it enough that I would actually live there again. I live in DC now, and I promise you, I could easily move to either place. And if my neighborhood wasn't so awesome and beloved because it's so easy for us to run around in DC, we would have moved to one or the other. I'd be divorced if I moved to Virginia because my husband's from Baltimore and he won't live in Maryland. But anyway, that's a story for another video. My contact info is coming next.